Hello and welcome to another edition of Unmanned Uncovered, brought to you by Consortiq, here to help you take your drone program to new heights. I'm your host, Bryn Lucas, and joining me on this edition of the podcast is Todd Schlekeway. Todd is the President and CEO of NATE, the National Association of Tower Erectors, and he's here to tell us all about what NATE do and bring it back to what we love to talk about, of course, and that's UAS and drones and how they are used within the industry. So, Todd, thank you very much for joining me on the podcast.
Happy to be here, Bryn.
Let's get cracking then, first of all. I think our lovely listener, wherever they happen to be listening, in the car, in the shower, wherever they are, they'd like to know a bit about you. So could you just introduce yourself? Give us a bit of a backstory. Where does Todd Schlekeway come from and how did you get to be where you are now?
You bet, Bryn. My name is Todd Schlekeway. I serve as the President and CEO of NATE, the Communications Infrastructure Contractors Association. We are a dynamic organization with members in all 50 states of the United States, plus we have members in 13 foreign countries, including the United Kingdom. And Consortiq's a great member of ours. But a little bit of my backstory, Bryn. I live in the upper Midwest. So I live in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, when I'm not on an airplane traveling for work. And my background is really legislative and regulatory work. I served in the state Senate in South Dakota and the legislative body there in the state for 2 terms prior to getting this job with NATE. And that has really helped me, in this role, as I'm sure your listeners are all aware, the regulatory environment, with wireless, with UAS, that comes in very handy with the issues and policy areas that we work on at NATE. But I am married. My wife, Jill, and I have 3 boys. We have a 10-year-old, 8-year-old, and 5-year-old. So that keeps us on our toes every day. But no, just enjoy this industry and the people that I've had a chance to meet through the years. I'm just starting my 9th year on the job. So wow. It's gone fast.
Yeah, I bet it has. Well, it's a very nice little intro and an idea of who you are. Have you ever had any real interest yourself in drones? I know you don't really work within drones as a whole. So have you ever flown them? Do you like to have a go every now and then?
It's interesting, Bryn, because, I don't have an aviation background, but one of our fastest growing member categories within our association is our technology category, primarily because of some of the UAS service providers that are joining the association and some UAS training companies like Consortiq. So I have been on tower sites where drones have been deployed and utilized for video, for photos, for pre-inspection work, for closeout package documentation. So I have seen drones in action up close and personal. I have never flown one. I do not have in the United States, the Federal Aviation Administration has the 107 operator's license. I do not have that, but it is an area in our industry that NATE is really passionate about because of the safety value and the efficiency of the work that can be done when drones are deployed. So that's kind of my take on drones. But no, I do not personally have an aviation background.
It's all right. Neither do I. So it's not a problem. Actually, talking about your background, legislative and regulatory work, UAS, as you know, is absolutely rammed full of regulations. So they do go hand in hand, don't they?
They really do. And my head spins sometimes trying to keep up with all the UAS regulations just in the United States, let alone the global picture and what's going on over in Europe. Yeah, it's something that I think more needs to be done, but I think we're getting there as a industry when it comes to UAS and scaling UAS for commercial purposes.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's move to NATE itself. So you've mentioned NATE, the Communications Infrastructure Contractors Association. What does NATE actually do?
So NATE was founded as a trade association in 1995. So we're currently in our 26th year. And our core primary membership category within the association are the contractor companies. So these are the small businesses that do all of the wireless deployments, whether it be cell towers, whether it be small cell wireless systems, in-building wireless systems, airport, stadiums, shopping malls. pretty much anywhere where there is a connectivity need and where there's equipment and antennas, there's a pretty good bet that in the United States, a NATE member company was involved with the deployment or the upgrade or the maintenance of that equipment. And so, our members enable connectivity and allow us to, stream Netflix and watch YouTube videos on our smartphones. And it's just a really dynamic industry. But we also have associate member categories. And, so we have, I mentioned earlier, the technology membership category, which Consortiq's a part of. We have training members. We have the wireless carriers. So Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, Dish, they're all members of NATE. The vertical real estate companies that own the towers, they're members of NATE. Engineering firms, public safety entities. So we have a diverse membership, and we really, there's a layer and there's a chain involved with wireless infrastructure, and we really, our membership's made up of every layer of that chain. But we were founded for, and we continue to represent as the largest membership category, the contractor firms that enable connectivity.
Am I right by assuming, or taking from what you've just said there, that the towers themselves that we associate, say, mobile phones over here, cell phones over in the States, they aren't owned by the companies that we maybe subscribe to? So, for example, in the UK, I am on the O2 mobile network. In the States, you might be on T-Mobile or AT&T or something like that as your cell network. But they are the carrier, and they are essentially renting the space on that tower to put their transmitter, or their receiver. Is that right?
That is correct. In every country has a different model. So the United States, Bryn, you're exactly right. So the three major carriers are Verizon Wireless, AT&T, and T-Mobile, and then you have Dish coming on as a fourth carrier. And then we have smaller carriers like US Cellular and some other regional carriers. But the big national carriers don't own their towers, their infrastructure. They lease and rent space for their equipment on those towers. And so what we have is we have real estate investment trust companies. We call them tower owners or vertical real estate companies like Crown Castle, American Tower, SVA Communications, Vertical Bridge. Those companies own the structures. So it's a different model. If you contrast that to let's use Canada as an example, their carriers still primarily own most of their towers. So whether it's Rogers, Telus, or Bell in the Canadian market, they own their towers. So it's just a different model here in the States than you'd see in a lot of countries around the globe.
Mm. With the model you have over in the States, then, I say over in the States because I'm in the UK, but the model you have in the States, I take it there are pros and cons with every example of whether it's owned by the carrier or not owned by the carrier. Have you ever identified, or can you identify any things with the ownership of the towers that cause problems or create challenges, or is it all positive with that particular example?
It never used to be this way, Bryn. So, there was a time when all the carriers owned their towers, and we've seen this massive sell-off of their portfolios, tower portfolios over the years. And what I can tell you, it's extremely valuable real estate. You own vertical infrastructure. You get to lease space on different parts of your tower, and these are long-term contracts that renew. A lot of them have escalators in them. So it's valuable. I will say, I think the rationale in the United States, I can't speak for other countries, but here in this market, I think it allowed the carriers to just double down on the investments in their network and equipment and technology and not have to worry about the issues that come with owning the structure. And there's liability issues, there's maintenance and upgrade issues of the towers. For example, towers come with safety climb systems where the technicians have a harness and they latch onto a cable climb. Those systems that are manufactured as part of the tower are notoriously, Bryn, beat up by Mother Nature with weather issues. And so, if you're the tower owner, you've got to have your finger on the pulse and you've got to monitor and inspect your towers a lot to make sure they're up to compliance and they're not a safety hazard, that they're adhering to the standards that are applicable. So those are the type of issues that, probably necessitated the carriers selling their portfolio so they can kind of invest back into their network. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. And so NATE really, they oversee, is it overseeing the upkeep? Is it overseeing how the transactions are done between carriers and real estate owners? How's that role changed with NATE's involvement?
Well, NATE has members in every sector, every chain, so we have tower owners, we have the carriers, we have the large general contractors, the small subcontractors, they're all members. So we stay out of the business dealings of different layers of the chain. What we've seen is anytime there's a transaction in the marketplace where a tower company acquires more portfolio, there's more space to lease or rent. So there's more work for the members who are deploying the equipment on that tower. So what it does, I guess, to sum it up, is that M&A activity, that those transactions in the marketplace are good for business for our contractor members.
Your role then at NATE, I have you down as the president and the CEO, right? So it's a very grand title that you've got for both of those. What do you actually do on a day-to-day basis at NATE?
So we have a great team at NATE. As our membership's grown, our employee base has grown, and we have a really great team with a great culture. Everyone contributes, does their role extremely well. We have a 9-member board of directors who are my bosses, who own companies in the industry. So they're great. They're subject matter experts in the industry. They kind of govern the association. And then we have standing committees and ad hoc committees. And, we have a safety and education committee, an OSHA relations committee, a trade show committee, a member services committee, a UAS, unmanned aerial systems committee. So we have all kinds of committees, and those committees are comprised of, Bryn, member company volunteers. So we get a ton of work out of volunteer committee members who represent our member companies, and they do it because they love the industry. They want to see a safer industry, a more professional industry. And so NATE, really leads in the marketplace when it comes to developing the standards that exist for safety, the best practice resources. We do a lot of lobbying in Washington, D.C. on behalf of our members. So tying it back to my role, Bryn, is I kind of chart the vision of the association. I work to get our message out to the masses, through the media, through speaking engagements, through advocacy efforts, in Washington, D.C. My role is to keep us moving on a growth trajectory. And so it's really been fun, because when you're working with a trade association in an industry as dynamic as ours, we benefit when the industry has a long growth curve. That tends to equate to more members. And so it's really been a fun ride here so far.
I bet it is. And it's one that you imagine, or I imagine, is going to continue to grow, because things like 5G being rolled out across the United States, has been rolled out across the UK as well. And many countries are switching to 5G, aren't they? And I believe that's something that we can talk about with 5G in America, because 5G is going to require the use of these towers.
Absolutely. And, I have just a few stats to share just to show you how long a runway here in the United States 5G deployment will be. So NATE works with another trade association, CTIA. They're the Wireless Association. They came out with a study recently, Bryn. And just to give you an example of the long growth trajectory we're looking at here when it comes to 5G deployment, CTIA says, if you count small cell antennas, which are integral to 5G, by 2026, there'll be 800,000 sites, and that could be the big macro tower sites, but that could also be the small cell equipment on light poles, on rooftops, on street furniture, on side of buildings, in right-of-way utilities, areas, and on utility structures. So think about that. I mean, by 2026, 800,000 antennas.
That's incredible. Do you know what the current number is?
Well, in their study, there's currently 154,000. So think about that.
Wow, that growth is massive. What are we talking, 4.5 years, something like that, to go from to grow 650,000 sites.
And then another interesting stat from their study, 80%, Bryn, of future infrastructure deployments will be small cells. And again, these are the small antennas that are about the size of less than the size of a pizza box. So like a backpack size antenna.
Okay.
And so 80% of future infrastructure deployments will be small cells. And, it's just amazing some of the stats that came from that. One stat I like, and just to give, I think I'm as guilty as the next person when it comes to smartphone use. One of the questions in the CTIA survey is they asked consumers what they would give up for their smartphone, and 72% would give up chocolate before their smartphone. 65% would give up TV, and this one would be a hard one for me, but 63% would even give up coffee to keep their smartphone. So
I wondered where this was going to go, actually, Todd. I thought we might go into a bit of the X-rated category there for a second.
Yeah, we won't go down that road, but that just paints a picture that how integral these smartphones are to our to commerce, to our day-to-day professional careers, our day-to-day personal lives.
It's fascinating what people will or will not do for a small smart gadget that they hold in their hands. But I think as technology has moved on, we become more and more dependent on it, don't we?
Oh, absolutely. And there's the government has a role in this. So what has fueled some of this early 5G deployment, Bryn, is I'm not sure if you're familiar with the term spectrum, but in the US, spectrum is the radio airwaves that are needed to carry signals. And so 5G signals don't propagate and carry as far as your traditional equipment that's on a 200-foot cell tower. So in the US, the Federal Communications Commission has done a great job hosting spectrum auctions where the companies in the industry, so let's say Verizon, T-Mobile, AT&T, they acquire spectrum bands, and then they're using these spectrum bands to increase their 5G deployments. And the mid-band spectrum is kind of the best spectrum for 5G because it is really fast. It allows for these ultra fast downloads and these speeds, but it also can carry some distance. And so where I live, the downtown corridor in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, for example, has 5G equipment on the light poles downtown. And so wow. It's just great. You can walk by them, and when you're in close proximity to them, you could download a Netflix movie like really, really fast. And so it does make a difference. And so it's just been fun to watch. But spectrum is what's fueling the ability to deploy 5G and get it to scale.
For companies like Dish, you mentioned that they've come in as a fourth carrier. How easy is it for a company such as Dish or another, say, a smaller company to make inroads into that area, really?
That is a great question, Bryn, and one that I'm hearing a lot about Dish, who's also a NATE member company. So from a NATE perspective, we're really excited that they're coming in and building a greenfield network, because if you just do the math, a majority of our members are contractors. It's better to have 4 national carriers than 3 national carriers. There's more work, there's more competition. That's a good thing for NATE. So we're excited about Dish's entry into the marketplace. How easy is it? It is very difficult. The investment they're going to have to make to get their network up and running, is astronomical, and they're prepared to do it. They have a lot of spectrum, which I referenced earlier, that they've acquired previously that they can put to use and deploy. They're kind of approaching it differently. They have a kind of an open radio access network model, a cloud-based model. So they're kind of creating an innovative approach to how they're going to build this greenfield network. And they've also executed signed contracts with all the major tower owner vertical real estate companies. And so they have space to deploy their equipment on. So they're doing all the right things. It's going to take time, Bryn, for them to get scale and get national. They're hoping in the third quarter here of the calendar year, to light up, and their first market for 5G will be Las Vegas. So that's kind of, they've chose Las Vegas, Nevada as their first metropolitan area where they're going to start their network. But it's a heavy climb. It's a heavy lift because you're dealing with Verizon, T-Mobile, and AT&T, who've been in the game a long, long time.
Are they receptive to a fourth carrier, or are these T-Mobile, Verizon, AT&T, are they a little bit wary, should we say?
Yeah, that's another great question. Of course, the marketplace here changed, with, T-Mobile acquired Sprint. They had to make concessions to get approval from the Department of Justice, and even the FCC. Part of those concessions were to create an opportunity for Dish to enter the marketplace as a fourth carrier. So, it's all about subscriber numbers for the carriers, and it's a competition. They're competing with each other in the marketing arena, Bryn, every day. Just turn on the TV and look at the commercials. They're all saying they have the best 5G network, and but it's a competition for subscribers, the postpaid wireless subscribers who pay monthly, are very lucrative, and they're all competing with each other. So, if you look at it from that standpoint, long term, I mean, Dish is a competitor with everyone, but it was necessary in order for T-Mobile to make the Sprint acquisition final, for them to give concessions to allow Dish to enter the marketplace.
Yeah, competition is always a good thing, I find. I think competition should be something that we encourage actively, and it sounds like NATE have got the finger on the pulse, which is great. Now, because we are really unmanned, uncovered, we're talking UAS. We've got these great big towers in some cases that are there for cell networks, for mobile phone networks, and I think it doesn't really matter where you're listening to this podcast. It's as relevant in the USA as it is to us in the UK and across Europe as well. What are your thoughts on drones, UAS, being used for towers, for example, inspection?
Yeah, NATE is all in on drones. We started in 2016 a UAS committee that's really growing. NATE's initial interest in drones, Bryn, was because of the safety component that we think they can bring to the table. Drones are never going to be a replacement for the tower tech workforce, nor do we want them to be. But what they are is a very valuable and powerful safety tool. And so let me give you an example. I mean, technicians climb up and down towers many times per day, depending on what they're doing that day, what they're deploying, what they're working on. Using drones can mitigate the number of times those technicians potentially have to climb up and down. And so there's inherent safety value there, because, fall protection continues to be one of the largest safety deficiencies in our industry. And so if you're not going to eliminate the climb, but you could mitigate the number of climbs. Even before technicians set foot on the tower, drones can be used for pre-site inspections to get a look at the tower, get a look at that safety climb system. And then all the customers in the industry, oftentimes the carriers, sometimes the tower owners, require closeout packages in the form of photo and video to prove that you did the scope of work that you were hired to do. And so, drones can be used at the end of the job to go up and get that documentation to submit, that are required part of the job to close out that job. And our industry calls those closeout packages. So we think drones have inherent safety value. It can make the work more efficient. And that's important because we have a shortage of workers in our industry, like many construction trades, Bryn, right now, and at least in the States. And so safety, work efficiency, and as drones have evolved, there's a lot more use cases that I've seen. Natural disaster response, monitoring environmental species, bird nesting on the towers, and there's all kinds of restrictions and environmental processes you have to follow if there's bird nesting on the towers. So those are just a few examples of the ever evolving use cases that we're seeing drones and utilized for in the United States here.
It's interesting. I was thinking more, well, it's going to be more efficient. There's going to be cost savings. You wouldn't have to have the same number of people climbing up and down towers. So it is, like you say, going to mitigate the chances of people getting injured. I hadn't even considered things like nesting, bird nesting, or wildlife or anything like that. That didn't even come into my mind at all. So I think the use of drones goes far and wide. And as they develop and as sensors develop, they can be used for more and more things. I'd like to just ask you about the future, really. The future of the tower network, really, and also the future of drones working in conjunction with it.
NATE members have been on the front lines of deployment for every generation of wireless build out, and we'll continue to do this. The 5G deployment cycle has a long runway ahead, and we'll be on front lines when we start talking 6G. And when it comes to the network, I think what you're going to see in 5G and as we move into next generation technologies is it's more of an enterprise play, Bryn. And when I say that, I mean, there's telehealth applications, there's Internet of Things, there's autonomous vehicles, there's smart cities, and the network for the consumer like you and me. Our coverage is pretty darn good right now, right? I mean, we can stream YouTube, we can use our phones to do a lot of things. Where it's really going to come into play is in the enterprise sector, and because the network is that much more robust and that much faster, and it can handle all these different applications we're talking about. So that's exciting to me to see that evolve. And then in regards to drones, the use cases continue to evolve. The regulatory environment in the US is pretty good because you can fly drones within 400 feet of a tower or above a tower. There are still some issues with companies allowing contractors and subcontractors to use a drone. So you could even have one member of your tower crew could be 107 certified, and that the customer may say, no, you can't fly a drone on our site. So
right.
we still have a ways to go when it comes to, getting drones to scale, to leverage their potential. And it's not a regulatory roadblock per se. It's more of a, you've got to get the customer, that company's approval to do it. But there again, as technology evolves in the drone sector, as the use cases evolve, that is going to increase the likelihood to having more drones be utilized in the industry. And NATE's vision, Bryn, at the end of the day, is we want every tower crew who rolls up on a tower site to have in their truck a small UAS that they can use to make their jobs more efficient and to be safer. And that's our ultimate goal.
So it sounds like as our demand on our mobile devices, cell devices increases, the speed will improve as well. And it'll be a cyclical thing. We'll want more speed, we want more power and faster and better devices. And so the network will have to be improved. And as the network gets improved, so will the opportunity for UAS increase as well.
Yeah, I think so. I really think that's spot on.
I think that's quite a positive place to end the podcast, actually. So, Todd, before you go, if people want to find out about NATE, what's the best place? Where should they go?
Yeah, and I've really enjoyed the time here, Bryn. Thank you so much for the conversation today. They should visit NATE's website, www.nate, N-A-T-E, home, home.com. We have all of our resources. You can find out all about the association, our members. And one of our goals is continue to expand internationally. I would encourage, your listeners, both from the United States and outside the States to check out NATE because we have a lot going on and in our industry, the future is really bright.
Yeah, it's a really comprehensive site. I do urge whoever it is, whoever you are listening to this podcast, to go and have a look, natehome.com. Todd, before you go, is there anything else that you'd like to add that I've missed off or that you'd just like to bring to our attention?
I just want to thank you, Bryn, for hosting this podcast. NATE really appreciates Consortiq as a member. have to give a shout out to Brian McKernan, who is from Consortiq in the States. He's the chairman of NATE's UAS committee, does a great job representing our industry. And so we're just excited to get more of our members involved in the activities of the association, and we appreciate Consortiq.
Todd, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
Yep, thank you, Bryn. Have a wonderful day and enjoyed the conversation.
My thanks once again go to Todd Schlekeway, and if you want to find out more, as he says, head to the NATE website. Thanks very much for listening to this episode of the podcast. Hopefully you enjoyed it. You can find many more episodes on your podcast provider, or just go to Consortiq. That's Consortiq with a Q at the end, consortiq.com. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast and tell everybody you know just how good it is. I've been your host, Bryn Lucas. Until next time, stay safe.